Alright, I chose to do my project on Chapter 4, the student diversity. I put in the little image out of the book that talks about the individual and what makes up the individual's background. This is an image from James A. Banks' book, Cultural Diversity in Education. Culture is pretty much the shared norms, traditions, and behaviors, languages, and perceptions of a group of people. The cultural background of a child is mostly affected by their ethnicity, socioeconomic status, religion, home language, gender, and other group identities and experiences. I have replicated this image in the book that better lets you see all of those things into one that makes up that one individual. All of these pose a challenge to the teacher in the classroom. The book states that the schools expect students to be highly verbal and to spend most of their time working independently and to compete with other students. This is completely different from other cultures. A lot of them place more emphasis on cooperation and peer orientation rather than the independence. How does socioeconomic status affect student achievement? First, socioeconomic status is a measure of prestige within a social group that is most often based on income and education. A little thing I pulled from the book says working class and low-income families experience stress that contributes to child-rearing practices, communication patterns, and lowered expectations. Students also learn a normative culture that is different from the middle-class culture of the school, which demands independence, competitiveness, and goal setting, like I stated in the last slide. Some school and community factors that go into the diversity of a school or a classroom. School funding is correlated with social class. Middle-class children are likely to attend schools with greater resources, which are better paid and qualified teachers, and many other advantages. Schools that serve low-income students typically have to spend much more on security services for children having difficulties and other needs, leaving less money for regular education. Another thing I pulled from the book was children from impoverished neighborhoods and high poverty community tend to encounter more crime, lack of positive role models, inadequate social health and health services, and teachers may hold a low expectation of students. Promoting resilience. Resilience is the ability to succeed despite many risk factors. Some things that we can do as teachers to promote that is to provide a supportive school community, a safe and orderly environment, positive teacher-to-student relationships, hold high academic standards for the students, and have many after-school activities just to keep them involved in the school day. They can do academics, they can do other things. Parent involvement. Why is it important? If you can establish a positive relationship with your students' parents, you can help them see the importance of supporting the school's educational objectives. And that's right out of the book. How can you accomplish this? There's so many different things you could do. Home visits, frequent newsletters sent to the families, workshops for the families, positive calls, emails to the parents. I know that I started out the year sending home a PE newsletter, just explaining to the parents what we'll be doing in PE for the first semester. I put my rules and expectations in there for them. I put a little note from me saying how excited I am to be working with their child. And actually, I got a lot of feedback. Our first parent-teacher conference was in September, and the kids had only been in school for about a month. But that's one thing that a lot of the parents said when they came to me. We really enjoyed your newsletter. It's nice to know what's going on in our kids' classrooms, da-da-da-da-da. I also like sending emails to parents. I first started out kind of threatening the kids with, if you don't listen, if you don't pay attention, if you're having a bad day, I'll email your parents. I have it right here on my computer, blah, blah, blah. But then, as I progressed into the year, I stopped using it as a negative thing and started using it as a more positive reinforcer, maybe. Without even the kids knowing, I would email their parents and say, little Johnny was having an awesome day today, he did this, this, and this, and this. Then the kids would get home, parents would say, hey, I got a great letter from your teacher. I just found that that's worked really well, and it gets the parents involved. They know that you care about their child. I just think it's a really good thing to do. Ethnicity and race affecting students' school experiences. Um, African Americans, Native Americans, and Latinos tend to have lower scores than European and Asian Americans on standardized tests. The lower scores correlate with lower socioeconomic status and reflect in part of discrimination against underrepresented groups. These groups are classified as an underrepresented group, which is an ethnic or social group, members of whom are less likely than other groups to experience economic security or power. Language differences affecting school achievement. English learners are taught in one of 4 types of programs: English immersion, transitional bilingual, paired bilingual, and two-way bilingual. English immersion, the first one, is the most common placement for English learners. The learners are taught primarily entirely in English. These are for the lowest leveled English learners. This builds their oral English to help them in English-only curriculum. The next one, transitional bilingual, it's common but not as popular for English learners. Students are taught reading and other subjects in their native language for a few years and then transitioned into English in later elementary grades. Paired bilingual, children are taught in both their native language and English. Two-way bilingual, which is also called dual language, English students are expected to learn Spanish, which typically, and Spanish speakers are expected to learn English. Multicultural education, that's education that teaches the value of cultural diversity. There's 5 key dimensions to that: content integration, knowledge construction, prejudice reduction, empowering school culture, and equity pedagogy. For content integration, teachers use examples, data, and other information from a variety of sources. Knowledge construction, they help students understand how knowledge we take in is influenced by our origins and point of view. Prejudice reduction, it's the most critical goal. It involves the development of positive relationships and tolerant attitudes among students of different backgrounds. Equity pedagogy, teaching techniques that facilitate the academic success of students from different ethnic and social groups. Empowering school culture, a school culture in which the institutions, organization, and practices are conducive to the academic and emotional growth of all students. The last thing I'll talk about is the different learning styles, which I found to be probably one of the most interesting parts of this chapter. I really learned a lot on this part. In the book, it talks about kind of 2 different definitions of intelligence. Like the first one that's in the glossary is general aptitude for learning, often measured by the ability to deal with abstractions and to solve problems. The second definition of intelligence, Sternberg said this, which is the ability to figure out how to get what you want out of life by purposefully using your strengths to compensate your weaknesses. I think that's obviously not by the book, but I think that's one I tend to go with a little more. You have to know your strengths, and that's how you're going to get by. I took this learning styles quiz type thing, and I realized that I'm a kinesthetic, more visual kinesthetic type learner. I always kind of knew that, but I couldn't really pinpoint it. Gardner's multiple intelligences is a belief that intelligence is not to be thought of as a single entity, but rather as a combination of strengths. So that implies that different concepts should be taught in a variety of ways that call on many types of intelligences. You're not going to have a class and they're all going to be kinesthetic learners. There's highly doubtful. In PE, you kind of hope they are that way, but they're not. That would be the greatest if every class had a whole class of the same kind of learners. That'd make it so much easier on the teacher. So a way you can do this is to provide a variety of presentation models in each lesson to expand the number of students who are likely to succeed. Like I said earlier, you're not going to have the same kind of learner in every class, so you're going to have to think of different ways to get the content, the lesson, through to all of them. And I put up, lastly here, one multiple intelligence quiz I found. This is actually the one I took and that I gave to that high schooler that I interviewed. But I think it'd be really neat to give all of your kids, which I know for some teachers, especially in middle school and high school, that the task would be quite daunting sending out hundreds of these, but I think it would help you learn who your students are and how they learn. I know I sure learned a lot about myself and the young lady that I interviewed. You could even give all your kids the quiz and then group them into the learner that they are and kind of teach them in certain ways so you're not all together. That's just an idea I had. But that pretty much sums up the chapter. I just kind of did a summary of the high points and the high points for me. Thanks.